Well, good morning and welcome everyone. It's a new year and we're very excited to be with you. And the PATHS Project and DHR are really excited to have Dr. Eric Wilkinson with us. Welcome, Dr. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. We're going to talk today about being an orthopedic surgeon. We're trying to offer as many pathways as possible so that you can see some of the options in healthcare when you're picking your pathway and moving on to college. So you'll know what you want to do or what you may not want to do. That's also as important as finding that out. Later on, I'll open up the chat so you can ask questions. And for now, we're going to talk to Mr. Wilkinson. I think you have a presentation to show us, yes?
Yes, I do. I'd love to.
Okay, so let's go through your background and welcome.
All right. So like she said, my name is Dr. Eric Wilkinson. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm here with DHR Health at the Orthopedic Institute. And so for those of you that are unfamiliar with orthopedic surgery, that's basically surgery that fixes the bones and the tendons. And so orthopedic came from the beginnings of fixing kids with fractures and stuff, has progressed to now we work on people of all ages. And let's just jump into it. So like I said, my name is Eric Wilkinson, and I'm a surgeon. And grew up closer to Dallas in an area called Corsicana. And so I know that some of the everyone's wondering how long I've been in the profession. And so I'll probably go into it a little bit later, but I graduated high school in 2003 and then undergrad in 2007, medical school in 12. And then it just goes on from there. So we'll kind of, I think, jump into this a little bit later. And then I think this is a good place to start too, is did I always know I was going to end up working in this field? I did not. I thought I would be in medicine, but I thought I would do anesthesia. And so for those of you that have not heard what anesthesiologists do, they're kind of like the pilots of the OR. And so they put the patients to sleep and then they wake them up after the case is over and they take care of them the whole time during the case. And so I thought that was what I was going to do. And then instead I decided to be the surgeon. And so we'll kind of come back through some of this, but just so you kind of know a little bit more about me or my path. So I put these cool emblems across the bottom just to kind of give you a better visual reference of my path. And so Corsicana High School, we had that cool blue and gold C there. And then I went on to A&M for my undergrad. A&M for my medical school, so Giga Maggies. And then at this point during medical school, I decided to join the military. I met a really good friend there, and he convinced me that the military or the United States Navy was a good option. And then I heard more information about being a flight surgeon. And so I made that choice. So once I graduated from medical school, I became an officer in the Navy. And then as part of that process, I went and did my first year of residency, which is called your internship year at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. And then from there, I had to do further training to be a flight surgeon. But I took a quick pit stop at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. So for those of you that may consider joining the Marine Corps on the enlisted side, since you are west of the Mississippi, this would be where you would live. And so I met all the new recruits there, working in their sports medicine clinic there. And then I went on to, the Naval Aerospace Medical Institute, where I was trained to be a flight surgeon. And then I went back to the fleet, meaning the active military with the Marines. And that's the little Pegasus looking symbol down there. And I worked with the Marines. After I completed my military time, I went to residency at the University of Alabama for my orthopedic surgery residency. And then from there, once you complete your residency, you can get further specialty training. And I did that at Houston Methodist for my sports medicine fellowship. And so, as you can see, those were a lot of places, a lot of pit stops along the way. And so this is probably the easiest way to break it out for you. So 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school. Essentially, my time in the military encompassed 5 years. That wasn't all active duty. I can talk about that more later. And then after that, you have 5 years of orthopedic residency and 1 year of sports fellowship. So if I did my math correctly there, which it looks like, I think I left out my military time there. So that's 14 years if you do the traditional pathway, and I took the extended pathway. And we can talk about the extended pathway as well. And so how did I pay for it? Always a good question. I was told from a young age I was going to college, and when it was time to go to college, my parents said, "Great, get some loans." And so we made it happen. And so my parents paid for some. I took some loans. The military paid for some of my medical school as well. And so across the way, it got paid for. And so at this point, I don't have any loans, which is a huge accomplishment in itself.
Yes, it is.
But we can talk about the money and the loans and the military service and all that as well. I think that's a good topic to talk about. And then this will come out across the way, but it's a marathon. Even if you take the shorter version than what I took, it's definitely not a sprint. So you gotta just keep moving. And so that's for those of you that are familiar with Nemo. That's what Dory says. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And so that's what I would, that would be something that you need to know. And so I think when your expectations and your reality are the same, then you'll do just fine. You just need to know that you gotta keep swimming sometimes. So kind of briefly, a day in my shoes. Kind of depends on what the day is. So today is typically my OR day. I kind of switched my OR day back and forth. And so actually, I would typically be in the OR now, but I changed it so I could speak with you guys. And so some days it'll be clinic where you see the patients. Some days it'll be the operating room where you're performing the procedures. And then other times, since I chose to be a sports surgeon, we get to do the fun part, which is you can go stand on the sidelines and take care of the athletes as they compete, or go see them in the training room. So here at DHR, we also cover the Vipers. So we get to go see them before the game, be on the sideline, see them after the game. Hopefully don't see them in our clinics because that means they're injured. But that's part of the job, and part of the job I really enjoy. So I don't know how much you want me to go into these things. Basically, it takes a team. It's hard to be the surgeon with no team. And so there's a lot of support staff along the way, from PAs, NPs, scribes, medical assistants. There's a lot of jobs that if you don't want to be the surgeon, but you want to be part of the team, there's plenty of opportunities for you. There's a list of them. Other jobs are specific to the OR. People that help you in the OR, they help prep the patient, they help hand you the tools, they help you do the procedures, or they take care of the anesthesia, take care of the patient pre or post-op. And so there's lots of opportunities. And then you don't have to be an orthopedic surgeon. I think an orthopedic sports surgeon is the best job, but I met my wife in medical school, and she's an ER doctor, and she thinks her job is the best job. She saves lives, and I save lifestyles. So we each perform a function, but there are other opportunities out there, and you'll interact with these people as well. Like I said before, as a sports surgeon, you also talk to the coaches and the players. So overall, what are the skills that help you be successful? We can get into this further as well, but number one, you just have to care. I think that's number one. The biggest part about being a physician, any kind of physician, you have to care. You have to be able to make decisions. You have to be confident in your decisions, and then be willing to take the responsibility. And so I've heard other people say that they don't want to be a surgeon, or they don't want to do certain things in the medical field because they don't want the responsibility. And that is perfectly fine. I would be a terrible nurse because my caring side of nursing care, I would not be very good at. But on the surgeon side, taking the responsibility, that's something that I don't mind doing that. And so that's where I think it helps me be a better surgeon. So these are kind of the phases of my life. We can go back through these if you'd like, but just kind of skipping through them a little bit. I was with the Marines as a flight surgeon. This is the ship I deployed on there in the middle. We had Harriers, which is the aircraft on the left. That's the one that Arnold Schwarzenegger flew in one of those movies that y'all probably never seen. The bottom is a little helicopter that they let us learn to attempt to fly, which was a lot of fun, but very hard. On the right pictures are the Osprey. That was the aircraft of the aviation squadron that I took care of. And so the top right is air-to-air refueling. And you can't tell, you may be able to tell, there's a rotor on the far right of that. So we were waiting our turn to go do the same thing. And that was a pretty cool training experience. So the Navy has a lot of cool experiences. I was a lieutenant or an 03. And so that was a great time of my life. After that's my orthopedic residency. And so as you can see, there's some disasters on there, and that happens. And you will see that there's a book on there because you do a lot of reading. Did some sports coverages. And then I was blessed with this little girl down here who I took a nap, and I don't know if you can tell in here, but she put marker all over her face, arms, and legs. So this is kind of a quick synopsis of what residency is like. It's good, but it's a lot. And so when you're doing all these things, no matter what you choose, life goes on. And so on the far left, this is where I was when I went to residency. We had Luke. He was like a year and a half old, and we didn't have my daughter yet. And then she came my first year residency. And as you can see, they got bigger. And by the time I was done with residency, I had this big, mean, tough baseball player. And so you have to enjoy life. Being a physician is great. But your kids will grow up, and they will be small and grow up while you're still in training or your early career. And so that's something that you just kind of need to know. And so this is my fellowship year. This is probably the best year of training. So I covered the Houston Rodeo, covered the Astros. This was Astros spring training. We went down there for a week, covered some Final Four games last year. That's that's a picture of the actual ring for the World Series from 2020, not this past year, but the year before. And so it was cool. That was a great experience. The Astros are awesome. But that's kind of the good part. And then now I'm the boss. So I think I'm running out of time on my presentation, but we can talk about some of these things. The only thing I would say is kind of skipping forward on this is you need persistence. And as far as what to focus on to get there, as you transition from high school to undergrad, people always ask, like, what should I major in? And so what I would say is major in whatever makes you happy, because everyone that goes to college thinking they're going to be a physician, they do not leave college and go to medical school, and they don't necessarily finish that race, and that's fine. But make sure your degree is in something that you like and something that will help you in the future. And so you can always do your medical prereqs on the side, but having a degree that's helpful and that can help you get where you want to go in the future if you change your mind, I think is the most important part. So that's pretty much it. The only thing I'd say is find a mentor. I didn't have a mentor. I kind of blazed the trail. I took a few side trails as well, as you can tell. I don't regret those at all, but having a mentor can help make your path easier and more direct, and they can kind of part the water for you. Mentors can open doors that you would never see and never have open for you. So that's something that I very much would recommend. And then what I would tell myself is my kids are actually really fun. So I've enjoyed that part. It's been great. Life, I feel very blessed. I enjoy where I'm at, but that doesn't mean that my days are without frustration. And so it's still life. You still have to live, but choose something that makes you happy and it doesn't feel like work. I'd say 90% of the days I go to work, I don't feel like I'm working. And so that's good. Even though I can be very frustrated through the day. On those days, it still doesn't feel like work. And so I think that's at the end of the day, what you should strive for. And so hopefully each and every one of you can find that job for you. So
I think that's great. And thank you. A lot of what you said really resonates with me, and I'm hoping students will learn a lot. I'd like to go into a bit more detail. So let's go back to school when you were young and little Eric going to elementary and middle school and then high school. were there any things you did while you were in high school that you feel like helped prepare you for the position you're in now? Did you take any steps at that time to start this marathon?
Other than being a good kid, I think that's the number one thing is you have to care about your grades. And then you also, have to be a good kid, follow the rules, those things. So if you don't have grades, you'll never get there. I think that's something that people kind of put off that like, hey, like I'll get it together later on.
Right.
Your high school grades affects your college affects your med school affects your residency. And so that doesn't mean that you can't correct the ship, but it's a lot harder to get from a bad spot to a good spot than stay in a good spot to start with. And so overall, I'd say that that's the number one thing. Leave your options open. I actually did not I didn't have a mentor. My parents were very hands off. My parents are not physicians. And so I kind of wandered off into this world alone to some degree. And so you can do it, but it's on you. And so what I would say is I didn't take all the courses that would have teed me up, or they told me, in retrospect, they told me I should have taken in high school, like all the biochem, biology, physics, all these things. Maybe it would have made my college easier, but to be honest with you, having good grades kept all those doors open. So when I got to college, I could continue, I could take all the classes that I hadn't taken yet. I could take the rest of the ones that I thought that would help me for medical school. Right. I could go on. But if you shut the doors early with subpar grades, then those are hard to overcome. So there wasn't anything specific other than just being a good student. And while maybe you didn't take exactly all the upper courses that they think you need, you can get there without them. I promise you.
Okay, good. Yes, because we hear that a lot about grades, and kids, do their best. They always do their best, but they don't seem to be able to see the importance of it a lot of times until it's, I don't want to say too late, but later on, they're having to work doubly hard to make up for it. So getting good grades. And also, I think you made a good point of not getting in trouble, like making sure you have a good, clean record, and that you haven't done something that would prevent you from being licensed. I think that's really important too. So good. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about college then. So how did you decide that you wanted to go to A&M? I know that's a crazy question, but
well, so as I said, my parents told me I was going to college. I'm probably not the best one to ask this question to. I had good grades. Then if you were in the top 10%, it was automatic acceptance. I don't know what the program is now. So literally one day, I just decided I was going to A&M and I barely filled out the application, didn't submit an essay. And it was like, see you next fall. And then later went to A&M it was the first time I'd actually been on campus. And so it was terrible weather. I felt sick, all these things. It was a terrible experience in that regard. But so I'm not doing that with my kids, is what I would say. I think coming out of the Valley, it's a little bit harder. Where I lived, I was a little bit more central. We were like 45 minutes from Baylor, 3 hours from Austin, 2.5 hours from College Station. So we could have done more to go and see these schools. And in retrospect, I kind of wish we would have. Every school has its personality, and I think finding a personality that fits you is good. A&M's personality fit mine fine. But there are, maybe it wouldn't fit everyone's personality. My wife went to UT. I told her she made a bad decision, but
house divided.
UT, so, but anyways, I would recommend going around and seeing the schools just to make sure you like it. And obviously check out their programs to make sure they have what you need, get you where you want to go. But me personally, I literally just picked it, and the rest is history.
I think that you bring up a very good point. Visiting the school and imagining yourself on that campus. My schooling was not in Texas. It was out of Texas, but I did a summer program at UT and I did a summer program at A&M. I have no family affiliation with either school, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I felt, and I could have felt that way at UT, but I just felt more at home when I was at A&M, and I got that feeling that I think kids get when they go visit campuses. Going to a campus and imagining yourself there, imagining yourself living there, working there, studying there. Do they have the facilities that you need? I think that's all very important when you're deciding where to go to school. It's more than a mascot. It's a culture, and every school has its own culture. And I think it's really important to figure that out and decide what's best. So good. I'm glad to hear that.
The other thing I'd say is some schools are really far away. Even from like where I live, Texas Tech was really, really far away.
Right.
So for some people, that's a problem. They do well at school, but then they can't really get home to see the family and things like that. I was 2.5 hours away. So like if I really wanted to go home on the weekend, I could go home any weekend. Could probably drive home overnight if I had wanted to.
Right.
So if that's something that you feel like you need to be closer to family, that's a real thing. Like you need that support. And so make sure that the school you choose is within driving distance, because airplane flights aren't really that reasonable.
Right. So
Valley is huge for family. We moved back down here to be close to our family, but that's something else that I think to take into consideration.
And I think the opposite's true. If you feel like once you finish high school, you want to see the world and you want to see, don't be afraid to go away. Don't be afraid. I have a niece who is a freshman at University of Chicago right now. She grew up in Austin. She's going through a lot of changes, but she's a type of person who embraces those changes. And she could have easily gone to UT. She could have easily gone to A&M. She was a very good student, but she wanted to leave Texas and live someplace other than where she grew up. So if that's something you want to do, that's an important thing. And talk to your counselor. Your high school counselor can help you go to these places and go. The next thing I want to talk to you, and this is a thing I've been patiently waiting to ask you, is the military. So many students want to go into the military and don't know very much about. So first of all, let's talk about your decision to go into the military. What prompted that?
So I also didn't really have a military family. Some people in my family had been in the military, but it wasn't really something that was, I feel like some people have military families and that's a part of their family heritage.
Right.
That while we were proud of our members that had been in it, that wasn't really just something we talked about that much. So I knew nothing about the military. I knew nothing about the military, so much so that I didn't really understand what the difference in officer and enlisted was, which is very, very, very basic. And so basically the route I chose to go into the military was through being a physician. A couple of things about that. You can join the military once you're in medical school once you're in medical school, you can join, as a future physician, because you'll assume you'll graduate, right? But the military doesn't help you get into medical school. So you can't say, hey, I'll sign on the dotted lines if you guys get me in. That's not how it works. And so you still have to do the work, and then you have the opportunity to join the military and be a military physician. So I think that's number one, the big thing I would say. The thing I would say is the reason I joined the military was because I wanted to do something in the military that you can't do on the outside. And I think that that's a really important thing to focus on if you're going to join the military. So someone came and talked to us about being a flight surgeon, and they showed, hey, you do this flight training stuff, you work with the pilots, you work with the air crew, you're part of the squadron, you do all these things. You're not a pilot, you're not a surgeon, you're kind of essentially you're a non-operative sports medicine provider for this active population, and you get to go fly in the airplane. And depending on what aircraft it is, you get to fly the aircraft from the second seat. And so that's why I joined the military, because I wanted that experience. I had a lot of people along the way that told me I shouldn't do it. That's a hard route. Don't do it. I did it anyways. It is the hard route. I don't recommend it unless you're really committed and you want and you know that you're going to follow similar steps that I did. And so at the end of the day, you gotta make decisions based on what you want in life. And so I joined the military to be a flight surgeon. So don't join for the money. Don't join to get out of your parents' house, unless unless it's the only way out, I
Unless
guess.
you need to.
Yeah, unless you need to. But pick something that you really, that's an experience that you can't get anywhere else. Or if you're really, I was fairly patriotic, pretty patriotic, and so if that's something that you're going to want to do in life, then do it. And so for me, the combination of the patriotic, want to serve my country and be a flight surgeon, I just jumped in with it. And so it really resonated with me. I appreciate my time in the military, but the military, you have to understand, military is the military. And it got to where sometimes I would tell my wife, like, what we were doing, deployments, this and that. And they're like, she's like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, military. And so you do have to understand that once you're in, what they say is what they say, and that's what you do. And so it's different than being at home and not liking what your parents say. You sign on the line, like you're in the military. So I will say that. But from a money standpoint, for medical school stuff, I think sometimes people have that question. Depending on what you do in medicine, depends on whether it's cost effective or beneficial from a purely financial standpoint. So
Right.
Previously, so if you're a specialty surgeon, like orthopedic surgeon, probably plastics, neurosurgeon, all these kind of specialty surgeons, it's not cost effective for you to go in the military and do it. I don't know how else to say that. That's just kind of what it is. If you're a family practice or like kind of like a provider along those lines, internal medicine, or if you're like a medical specialist, like endocrinology, things like that. I don't know specifically, but in general, it's probably similar pay or maybe better depending on what you are. And so that's something that you'd have to look into on the long run. So there's benefits, this and that, but if you really are just doing it you think that you don't want to pay the loans, you're going to pay the loans off. Like that's not your issue. But depending on what you do, you may pay more with time than you would have made money wise. And so, but either way you pay. And that's what I tell people with the military or these school loans things. You either pay with time or you pay with money, but you pay. And so I paid with time and money. And I got a great experience out of it. My wife was very supportive, but she was also very supportive whenever my time was up. So I think overall, the military, you just need to talk to some people that have walked those steps specifically for what you do. The recruiters, there's one thing that the recruiters tell people that I cannot stand, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But if you're going to go to college, you go in as an officer. You have a degree, go in as an officer. Do not go in as an enlisted guy and then transfer to officer. That's what I would say. People will probably hear this and have a rebuttal, but if you can make it through college and get your degree, the enlisted side will have too much, they'll be in your business too much, and they'll provide too much oversight to you for you to probably be very happy.
Right.
And so the officer side, you have more autonomy and you have more ability to make decisions and function the way that you would coming out of college. You're still going to be the lower officer. People will still tell you what to do, but it's different. The expectations are different. You're treated different. And so in that regard, that's one thing that I would say. The caveat to that is if you want to do special warfare stuff and you want to go kick down the doors and be the guy, you have to go enlisted to be that guy. So know what you want, figure out how to get there. I think you'll be happy.
So thank you for sharing that with us. So one of my first questions then is, you were recruited out of college. There were recruiters, or did you seek them out?
They'll be around. Like you won't have a problem. I would say I more or less sought them out, but from the medical specialty side, like it's different. Like you're kind of they can't target everybody, right? So they will come by your medical school and like try and see who's interested and who's not. So it's not hard to figure that part out. And there's a couple of different programs. When I went through, there were two programs. I don't know the specifics of them now. But the two programs were a little bit different. You'd have to talk with a recruiter to figure out which one kind of fits your needs better.
Okay. So let's talk about medical school, because I think most students, their idea is that it's hard to get into and it's really hard. That's what the feedback I get from students are, which is not wrong. but can you tell us a little bit about getting into medical school and then getting through medical school?
Okay. Getting into medical school, good grades. So I know no one likes to hear that, but I think my experience in residency kind of helped me understand medical school even better. Though, is like there's a lot of people that apply to medical school that have really, really good grades. And so grades isn't all of it. And so there's kind of like this window you have to hit. When you see what the average is, then that means that there's some people below the average and there's some people above the average on their grades or their testing. And so as long as you kind of hit the window, then it's game on.
Right.
And so if you are in the window, then you need to have other things to get your application, to go from an application to an interview. And so that's where grades isn't enough. And so it's hard when you have all these applications and all the grades are really close together. You're like, oh, I don't know how to tell the difference between this guy and that guy and that guy. So then they're like, okay, well, like leadership. Okay, well, this guy has a lot of leadership and that one doesn't. Okay, well, he's going to move to this pile and that one's not. Or extracurricular activities, meaning like volunteering or all these other things. And so I wouldn't say that there's like a guaranteed way you get in, but there's this like checklist of things that you really have to hit. And it's all because there's a lot of people that want to be there and there's not enough spots for everyone to be there. And so they have to literally figure out some way to take all these, to judge, the quality of this person's determination, persistence, their abilities, personality traits that would help the future profession. And that's how they do it. And so, it sounds like a lot. We all walk the steps. You got to put something in these boxes. You can't just have good grades and expect to get an interview. Once you get your interview, though, they've said that you meet everything. You are qualified. They will not interview you if you're not qualified. If they think that you're a person that they cannot accept or will not accept, they're not going to waste your time or their spot on bringing you to come see them or Zoom like this. So once you get an interview, do not have a chip on your shoulder that you're not good enough. You need to walk in there and tell them why you need to be accepted, right? And so I think that that's something that people need to understand is that the interview, the playing field is level essentially at that point, and it's gonna be more personality and hear yourself and all these other things. And so I would say overall in getting into medical school, that's how you do it. The other thing I would say is when the application comes open, put your application in on day one.
Right.
Be ready, be prepared, because this huge wave of applications come in and then they have to all get processed. And so if you apply at the very end, your application is still going to be in that stack of getting processed and people are going to be getting acceptance letters and you're going to miss the very last interview. And so the early bird does have a better chance of getting the worm in this setting. So be the early one, be ready, be prepared. These are all the things they want to see from you. But don't let your stellar application get caught up in this milieu of, depending on them to process or the central area sending them out. Like, don't let those people determine your success. Get it in at the very start. And then that way you have a fair shot at being seen in the first wave. And so I think that those are some basics that actually go a super long way. And so those are the things I would say about that. And then once you're in, I think medical school is interesting. I thought I was a pretty smart person, whatever. And I thought I was going to get there and I was like, oh man, maybe I'm probably not as smart as all the rest of these people, but it's actually a bell curve. And so the bell curve is, there's a whole bunch of people in this section here, and then there's some on the edges. And very much so, it goes back to a bell curve. Where the middle part is shifted to the smart side, right? Most of you guys are going to be right in the same spot. Some people are going to be brilliant, and some people, you don't really know how they got there. I'll just be very blunt.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. They obviously are smart enough to get there and do all that stuff. So they're more than qualified to be there, but maybe at that point, they let down their load because they made it. And I don't know, maybe they have other things going on in their life. There's a lot of reasons why people don't make it through medical school. And it's not all just based on intelligence. It's their drive, it's their family situation. Maybe they have kids, maybe they're, loved one got sick and they can't devote as much time, or maybe they realize it's not for them. And so people will not make it through.
Right.
People will not make it through. But the other side of that is that you don't get kicked out of medical school for making one bad grade. They really work with you. I was not in this category, but they really worked with some of these people. And you don't get kicked out. I showed up on the first day. I was like, oh man, I hope I make it back after Christmas. I had no issues, but as a reassurance, they work with you.
They want you to succeed.
They have chosen you to succeed. And so it's in their best interest for you to succeed. And it's way different than college. In college, you're out. Like, you don't cut it, we'll get someone else.
Cut it.
But in medical school, you are a chosen person. You're in a spot that cannot be refilled. Especially like if you fall out in the second year, you can't just put a new person in the second year. And so they want you to make it all the way through. And so I think that that's something that's good to know. Medical school is not easy, but if you made it all the way up to that point, you have the skills, the intelligence, you have all the pieces. You just have to have the drive, and you have to just keep pushing, and you'll make it through.
Yes. That's a lot of school, Eric. That's a lot of school. So I know you talked about the military, and let's go back and talk about how, maybe you don't have to give us your individual, but how does someone pay for all of this? Because I'm very impressed that you have no loans, you said?
Yeah.
That's miraculous from what I understand. So let's talk about that.
So financial side, I think there's a couple of things along the way. So kind of backing up, I got to, kind of funny story. So like I was going to A&M, my brother had this roping horse, had a baby, had a complication. The horse went to A&M before I did. The horse had to have surgery at A&M. And I was like, come on guys, like, this would pay for my tuition. And then we're like operating on this roping horse. And so, I say that to say that, like we were solid middle class. And so they had the resources to pay for a fair amount of it. I had an aunt and uncle that gave us some money here and there. And then I mowed yards or did things in the summer and saved my money. And then that's basically just kind of pieced it together.
Right.
It wasn't extravagant. But at the same time, my parents told me, it's like, hey, we could save all this money if you would just go to the junior college here in town.
Right.
It's way cheaper than going to A&M. You can just live at the house. I won't charge you rent and all this stuff. But like you were saying before, it was like, I like my parent, or I liked my parents, I didn't have a home issue, but I was ready to get out of Corsicana. And so that was not an option. I was not staying. And so, yes, it would have been cheaper if I would have stayed for 2 years, got my prereqs out of the way, but I didn't. And so along the way too, I did do some junior college classes and transfer the hours back in through the summer. But like I said, I ended up doing like a lawn business and I just cut yards. And so at the time, my goal was to like get $300 a week. And then that just kind of covered my expenses. And so the reality of it at that time, tuition has since gone up a lot with the deregulation, but A&M's tuition wasn't that crazy per semester. It was maybe like $6,000 or something. And then the major expense was my living expenses. And so then those things just kind of got sorted out. So when I got out of college, I had some loans, but I didn't have like an extraordinary amount because I had kind of paid it away.
Right.
And then in medical school, I actually took loans the first year. So they offered $35,000, I think, something around there. And that paid for your tuition and then all your, like your living expenses and stuff. And then I joined the military my second year, but essentially it would have kicked in like after my fall semester. So I took loans for like the first year and then first semester, second year. So I ended up with still a fair amount of loans that I had to pay back. But at the time, A&M's medical school tuition when I started was probably like $13,000. And so that's not that much for medical school. Like at medical, like people go, if you're going to go to some of these private schools, your tuition will be $60,000 a year. And so that's tuition. That's not your living expenses and whatever you want to buy. And so I think in that regard, is like, you have to be smart. You may really associate better at this small artsy private school or something, but for $60,000 versus, $12,000, like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's
A lot. It is.
a lot of difference. And so that's where, like, some of this, as I went through, by the time I got out of medical school, tuition had gone up to probably like 18, 19 just for tuition, which is still not bad. Other people at that time were paying 20 to 30. And so that's something that I think that while you need to go someplace you fit in, I think you have to be smart about it, because at some point you have to pay all those loans back.
Right.
And so paying them back is painful, but it is what it is. If you make it your priority, you can make it happen.
Right.
In the military, I got paid as an officer. And so you get paid more in the military as a flight surgeon than I did as a resident. I probably almost got paid twice as much towards the end of it. And so that helped pay it down. And so, I would overall financially, I would try not to, I would make smart decisions so it doesn't like cloud your kind of long-term goals. But at the same time, if you're making smart decisions, then know you made the best decision at the time, and then live. And so I think that's kind of what I would say. But different ways you pay for it here and there. But even if you had all that, there was a person in my wife's ER class, and there were some people I worked with. They came out of residency with like $350,000, $400,000 in debt. And so that's crazy.
Yes, it is.
But like that one girl, she made it a priority to pay it off, and she had paid it off in like 3 years. And so, you're not living the lavish lifestyle. You're not, buying some crazy house and car and stuff. But at the same time, you're not living it. Your lifestyle is not bad if that's your goal, but it can be done. And that's what I would tell people. So don't join the military just because you don't want to pay off the loans. You're going to pay with time.
That's a hard way to pay off a loan.
Sometimes time is worth more than your money. And the other thing I would say is, when you pay with time, you don't pay with the starting salary, you pay with your end salary. So, if I work for 20 years, versus 25 years, whatever I would have made in that 5 years at the end is really what I traded, right? And so whatever your end salary is typically more than your starting salary. So whatever you expect your end salary to be, that'll give you an idea of how much income or whatever you traded in the middle. And so I think when you look at it that way, it can be quite a bit, because when you come out, you're still going to get starting pay and you're still going to work up, but you just lose it off the back end. So.
And I think it's that way with any field that you go into. You just have to make those decisions while you're in school, that you have to do this to pay for it. And then when you're done and you're working, you have to make it a priority to pay it off. So it's making those good decisions along the way.
For sure.
Okay, so now you're an orthopedic surgeon and you wanted to be an anesthesiologist. So what happened there? What made you change your mind?
So in medical school, they kept asking me, "Oh, you're gonna do they like to kind of guess what the medical students are going to do, right?"
Right.
So I look fairly athletic. I know all you can see is this right now, but I look fairly athletic. I worked out, all that stuff, and so that's the typical. I looked like the stereotypical orthopedic surgeon kind of stereotype. So everyone kept asking me, "How are you gonna do that?" I was like, no. But I really didn't know that much about it, to be completely honest. And the more, and my buddy that I met, he wanted to do orthopedics. And so the more I was around him and kind of realized what it was, and then got in the OR, I was like, oh man, I would much rather be the one doing the surgery than the one at the head of the bed taking care of the patient and stuff. And so I think that was kind of a personality thing of being like, do you want to be the surgeon or do you want to be the person at the head of the bed? Both jobs are very important. Both jobs have a lot of responsibility. But what do you personally want to do? And so to me, I really felt like while I was shadowing anesthesia, all I was doing was watching the surgeons operate. And so I thought I ended up deciding that, I'd much rather be the surgeon. the caveat to that is if you say you want to do anesthesia, then you can get in any room because
Oh,
all
that's
those
true.
rooms have anesthesia. And so when I shadowed, you may see like a spine surgery, some plastic surgery stuff. You may, belly cases, like you see everything, orthopedic cases. And so that's kind of like the slick way to experience all the surgical fields.
Yes.
Or see what they do in the OR without having to directly like target each surgery specifically. I didn't know that at the time, but in retrospect, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool because I saw these other things. And I was like, I don't want to be a general surgeon. I want to do this, So, but that was kind of an added benefit.
I think that you're part of your job that you're working in sports medicine, like you said, at DHR, you provide medical support for the Vipers. I know that the emergency medicine provides, let's say at high school games, there's always a trainer on the field. There's always an ambulance there. So there's different parts of medicine that get to be involved in sports. So I know for a lot of students, that's a good way to combine things that they really like. So tell us a little bit about the sports medicine side of it.
So the sports medicine side, so I guess kind of back on orthopedics, it's bones and tendons. And so there's a lot of different specialty areas you can go. You can be general, I mean, you do a little bit of everything, or you can be specialized. And so the specialties would be like you can do spine, hand, joints, foot and ankle, peds, oncology, so like cancer stuff. Or it can do sports, which is, like rotator cuffs, elbow, baseball injuries. And then, sometimes they do more hip. I don't do hip stuff as much, but knee injuries and stuff. So sports medicine also has the non-operative side, meaning like, oh, I'll pull a muscle, I'll sprain my ankle. Concussion stuff kind of falls into that. Here recently, the sports medicine actually kind of has two sides to it. So you have the orthopedic surgeon side, and then you have the other side, which is non-operative. And so if you want to go on that side, you don't want to be a surgeon, but you want to be in the same field, then it would be you can get there through family medicine, internal medicine, or ER, the more common routes. And so then, but on that side, they take care of like the sniffles, the heart stuff, belly stuff, skin stuff, concussions, and all that stuff. And so it's a team. When you're out there on the field, mainly I can tell them, hey, concussion, no concussion, but I'm going to send them to the concussion specialist to follow up. And so I think working together as a team is an important part. But as the surgeon, we're kind of looking more for like, oh, did they dislocate? Did they fracture something? And things like that. But the training staff does a really good job of also kind of providing that therapy role for things that aren't broken, fractured. And so I think that, if you really want to see what it's like, I think if you could get in with your athletic trainers and kind of cover some sideline stuff, I think it's a good way to start. You're talking about other people that are part of the on-field coverage. So you have your student athletic trainers, your obviously paid athletic trainers. Down here, they have a really good organizational kind of setup. And so usually we have like a little meeting before the football games. And so there's also usually a paramedic truck there that has a couple of paramedics. Some of them look really young. They look like they're somewhere right around high school or just out of high school. So that'd be a good opportunity. But also they have like at a lot of these places, they also have like some crowd control, police presence. They have like another group of people that take care of like people that injured in the stands and stuff. And so overall, sports medicine has a lot of different roles. We all work together. And it kind of just depends on which part of that you want to like be a part of. If you want to be, taping ankles and checking out stuff, then I think the student trainer part's good. If you want like the real life threatening stuff, paramedic truck is probably a reasonable spot. But from my side, hopefully we don't ever have to use the paramedic truck. So
I should tell you, my son is a paramedic and he teaches, and on the side, he does football games. So I know a lot about paramedics at football games, and we can have that in another session.
Yeah, we love having them there. I'm always happy to see them there. So
yes. So you talked a little bit about this, but I'd like you to expand upon it, the skills that it takes to be a surgeon, because I thought about that when I have surgery, how I'm putting my life in this person's hands, and you have to have faith that everything will come out well. And you hear lots of stories about when things go wrong, but there's also that many stories about things that go right. So tell us a little bit about the skills that it takes to be able to operate on someone and take that responsibility.
I think everyone wants to focus on the hand skills, or like, oh, a steady hand, or visual spatial orientation and stuff like that. So I think those things are important. I think that to be a good surgeon, you need more than that. But to specifically talk about, I think it depends on what surgery you're trying to perform. And so as a sports surgeon, I do a lot of arthroscopic surgery. So that means I make some small little incisions and put a scope in there, and then have like this really long tool of whatever I need. And then I'm looking at the screen. And so it's almost like, I hate to call it a video game, but it's kind of like a video game. Like, and so like the way your scope works, the camera isn't straight. And so it actually is looking at like 30 degrees. And so if you're not used to it and you haven't done it much, you get completely lost. And so if you ever watch someone do it and you know exactly what's going on, then they're very good. They're like extremely well, because it takes a lot of just kind of like eye-hand coordination on top of all the other medical stuff. And so that's one subset, but that's just mainly sports guys that do that. If you're getting a knee replacement, those are open procedures. You can see everything, and and so in that regard, like, I think that's a different skill set. But overall, I mean, you have to be able to like use your hands to make things happen that you want to happen, right? And you can't be super shaky. You can't be super nervous that you're gonna mess something up. And so I would say overall, some people will gravitate towards different areas of surgery based on what they feel their capabilities are. And so I wouldn't say like, oh, I can't be a surgeon because XYZ. I think you just kind of have to like go down that pathway. You have a lot of training. And so that the training, I think, is the biggest part. And so I had, even through my training, like we work with like the people under us and over us. And so like, as you go from your first year of internship to your fifth year, things change, and you figure out how to do it better, and this and that. So overall, I think the eye-hand stuff isn't as important. The hard part is, or this is what they say, is as you get older, as you go from like your first year to like the end of your career, your ability to do well or have good outcomes coming out in the OR starts with your ability to assess the patient in the pre-op area, like in your clinic on the first day. And so deciding which patients you can make better, which patients, picking the patients that you should operate on, and picking the ones that maybe they don't need surgery and they need something else. And so I think the decision-making part, and I've seen it through fellowship too, is a huge part of being a good surgeon. And so sometimes in the surgeon's mentality or the surgeon culture, we are surgeons and we operate. And so not everyone it gets better from surgery. They can be different, but that doesn't necessarily mean better. And so trying to hone that craft, I think, is the most important part about being a good surgeon. And that comes back to like caring, evaluating your outcomes, decision making, really honing in on your ability to read the patient. And so if you do those things well, it's usually the technical aspects of the OR directly correlate with, I think, kind of the patient you selected. So sometimes you have to operate, if it's an emergency and you don't get to choose your patients, but there's other times you do get to choose the patient, and you can tell the patient like, hey, like, I want to help you, but the best way I can help you is by not operating on you, or by having you do this. And so I think those skills are probably more important than the eye-hand stuff. While I admit, depending on what you're doing, you do need eye-hand. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I probably wouldn't be very good at that, but they need a different set of skills than an orthopedic surgeon, which is different than an OB-GYN, which is different than some of the other surgical specialties. And so, but across all those, I really think if you can be discerning and pick the right patients, you're going to have good outcomes.
That's great.
You have good therapy. I know we were talking offline about this earlier, but therapy is a huge part of orthopedic success. And so that's another part of the team that maybe you guys could have come talk to you, because I can do a great surgery and then they have no therapy and they will do very poorly. And it's not because of me. It's just because they weren't able to get back their range of motion or their strength and stuff.
Yeah, we had talked about this earlier, and I had a knee replacement, and the surgery went very well. I was home the next day, feeling great. But the best advice I got was do your physical therapy and do it with power. Don't play. Like when you go there, do it. It was not easy. I have to say that it was painful, but I feel now 6 months later, I can do anything I want to do. And I really owe that to the physical therapy and the good surgery that I had. So yes, I agree with you. I want to remind the teachers that the chat is open. And if you or any of your students have questions, I do have a couple more questions, but if your students or you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. So let's talk about your normal day. And you've already started to talk about it. You do different things on different days, but what's the best part about what you do?
I think the part I enjoy the most is talking to the patients. And so I think that as you get busier and stuff in practice, your ability to just kind of talk to the patients decreases just because there's more people. But I enjoy talking to the patients. And so, ask them what they're doing or ask them what their goals are. And then, trying to get them back to those goals. And so, that's the part to me that's fulfilling. Another, talking about how do you pick your specialty or how do you end up here? One of my friends in medical school, his dad was a physician, and he told him you basically pick your specialty based on the clinic that you enjoy. What he means by that is that surgeons really like to operate. Usually the clinic is the part that is not their favorite, just because they like to use their hands and make things happen.
Right.
But I agree with what he said, because the sports patients were the ones I enjoyed the most. They're very motivated, usually very educated. Most importantly, they got places to go. And so, if you tell them to do the therapy, they typically do it. You tell them you need this, that, whatever, they do it. And so I think having trying to find that common goal with them, I think is the part that I enjoy. And then trying to celebrate their successes with them. And so that, I think that gets back to why, at times, like, I may be frustrated in clinic, or I may, my day, I have days like everyone else. I'm human, life happens. But it doesn't feel like work when you talk to the patients and stuff. And so you're genuinely trying to connect or help them. And so I think that's the fulfilling part, or that's kind of the payoff.
Right. What's the most challenging part of your day-to-day?
I would say, the most challenging part of the day-to-day, it's still life, right? So
Right.
clinic's going. My wife, is a physician as well, so she has her schedule that when she's doing. We have 2 kids. I think life is the hardest part.
Yeah, life is the challenging part.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that like maybe goes unspoken. That's with any job, right? And so
Right.
she'll be like, oh, you need to do this or that with the kids, or and so like adjusting stuff. And so I think from that perspective, sometimes that can be the challenging part. Otherwise, I think setting your team can be kind of challenging. Once your team's set, it's really good, but kind of getting to that steady point, I think that can be a little challenging. I would, something I would tell the people listening. The other challenging part of like a surgeon is you can do everything right and the patient can still be dissatisfied. And so I think that can be challenging. Most, if you take a test and you do it all right, you get 100. Someone gives you a pat on the back. You do a surgery, you do it all right. They do all the right therapy, they do everything right, and they're just dissatisfied. of makes you feel bad, and that's something that's kind of part of being a surgeon. And so,
Mm.
those are the things I think that can be challenging as you come across patients like that. But what you do with the challenge, I think, is the important part. And so you can either take it personally or sulk, which I don't recommend, or you can, dig deeper and figure out like, okay, well, like what else can we do, or how can we get you there, and kind of take that challenge as a challenge, and try and turn those things into positives. And so, I think throughout the day, those don't happen very much, but when those do come along, I think that that's something that is part of being a surgeon. And so,
Right, right. And so for students who are interested in orthopedic surgery, what do you see the future of this profession? What are some things that you see happening in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
um, next 5 to 10 years. Well, there's been some movies where they like shine these lasers and everything gets healed up. I don't see that happening in the next 5 or 10 years.
Right.
We don't really have laser surgery in orthopedics.
Right.
We do have robotics, or
Mhm.
there's some you can get your knee replaced with assistance. Robotic assisted is typically how they say it. And then there's some like navigational stuff they use with spine stuff. So it is cool, and so there's sensors in the OR, and you can, you can use those things to help more precisely place your implants. And so every company has a robot, which
Right.
means that's the future that the industry sees, and I sincerely believe that that's the direction it goes, that it's going to go.
Mhm.
And so, I think that that's something that whether you want to be the surgeon or you want to be the guy that designs the robot or figures out the best way to make the interface between the robot and the patient, because that's kind of like where they kind of get hung up right now. Is like, how do you integrate like the patient's anatomy into the system so that it's directly aligned. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities in there. And that's what I think in the next 10 years is probably the biggest thing. The flip side of that is like, while we don't have lasers, they're trying to do all this PRP, and they call it kind of biologics or stem cell work.
Mhm.
I think that will take off. I don't think we're that close. A lot of that has to do with it's to get better at something, you have to define it very well, and we don't define it very well. It's like these stem cells are from there, or this PRP is like we take blood out of the arm and you spin it down, but when you spin down everyone's blood, their levels of the factors you're looking at are a little bit different. And so until you can get all that stuff standardized, it's hard to figure out exactly what works, right? So
Right.
my concoction, your concoction, someone else's concoction may be a little bit different, but they're working on that. And I think that there's a lot of, that's the regenerative medicine or biologic side. I think that I think that's going to take off. I don't know if it's gonna be 10 years, but
Maybe
that's
more.
the other side of it. That's reassuring. But like right now they say, hey, I'm going to put some stem cells in your knee and your cartilage is going to grow back. Those stem cells don't even know where to go.
Right.
And so like that's not there, but I think that's where it's going to go.
Mhm.
Some of those things you can put on your knee, it may help you, but it's not going to, your cartilage is not going to regrow, in the way that sometimes it is portrayed, I guess is the way I say it. So I think that those would be two big things for orthopedics: biologics, and then incorporating technology, which means like robotics. I was real quick, in the last 20 years, they've changed a lot of their implants. And so sports surgery has changed the implants and the way we do anchors and things like that. So the implant business is always evolving. And so that makes a huge difference. And so that's something else that I think will also kind of continue to evolve. And then just irregardless of all this, I know when I was in residency, they make a big push for females in orthopedics. The
Mhm.
problem is with females in orthopedics is that you got to find a female that wants to do orthopedics. And so
Right.
it's not that the field is not welcoming or does, the field wants females to be there. But females like to work with females. And so it's kind of this tipping point thing where if you don't have a whole bunch in there, then it doesn't attract a lot more. And then it makes it hard to get more. And so I know the residencies and stuff like that, they've made a push to kind of help that. Obviously the minorities, all these things, but I do want to kind of make a specific plug for that I think the orthopedic field is definitely open to everybody.
Right.
There may not be a lot of people that look like you in there right now, but at the same time, you got to start somewhere, and you get in there and get your friend in there, and that's how it goes. And so, but the field is definitely open to everybody, and I think that will just continue to expand.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Lastly, my last question is, what advice do you have for a high school student who is considering going into orthopedics?
It's a marathon. It's fun. Number one, my advice would be just make sure that's what you want to do, and that's kind of hard to know. But I guess if you, in general, people like to use their hands. Maybe they like to do woodworking projects or artsy craftsy kind of stuff. They like concrete things, meaning that there's a problem, let's fix it. That's kind of a general orthopedic kind of mindset. We don't like giving pills and doing a bunch of labs and hoping things change. We like to go be the change. And so I think from a personality standpoint, I think that, if that fits your mold, that's great. If it doesn't, you're more than welcome to come try it out. I don't think that kind of keeps you away. Orthopedics is very competitive. I'm lucky that I got where I am. I am happy I'm not going back through it now. So it's evolved a lot. It continues to evolve, and it continues to involve a lot of research to get in there. And this gets back to, how do you decide who gets these limited spots? And so the people that go into orthopedic surgery in general did really well, and they have a really good packet that got them into medical school. And so all their numbers don't look that much different. So you're kind of like taking this already top of the bell curve kind of group. And so basically what they did is they changed. So then the other thing that they start looking at is research, because you have to understand that residencies are also graded by their research output. And so the residencies that get highly ranked doesn't mean they're necessarily better. It just means they have more research. And so
Yes.
Maybe they are, maybe they are. I'm not saying they're not better, but they definitely have more research. And so the best way to get your residency to produce more research is to put more researchers in there. And so if they take people that have experience with research, that helps. If they take people that love research, that helps. And so that has become kind of like this other little checkbox that helps you succeed in getting where you want to go. And to do that well, you need to start early. And so that's where some of these people that have these amazing portfolios, they start doing some research, whether it's ortho or not, in undergrad. And as they kind of hone the direction they're going, then that research transitions to be more orthocentric or surgery-centric than orthocentric and things like that. And so that was not any advice I got as I went through this. But 100% that will make your life easier. If you start that process early, that you can't turn that on in the last 6 months. You got to start that early. And as you just, and that's kind of this whole thing, is you just got to keep like taking these steps and building your portfolio and putting all these pieces in. And in one day you'll be like, you'll be here. But that's what I would tell you if you're in high school and 100% that's what you want to do. You need to get on some research next year. I personally don't like research, so this is not a plug to benefit me at all, but this is to help them, because that is one of the things that was used to delineate applicants.
That's great hindsight for you that you can look back on. And I think you're right. I think students can start today to start building those pieces to get them where they need to go. It's the little things, starting in high school, through college, through medical school, through your residencies. All those little things add up to give you something that really does get you to reach your goal. I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. I think we've learned a lot. Students, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact us here at PATHS, and we'll get a hold of Dr. Wilkinson at DHR. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Just a second. I'm stopping the recording.